Hey, Monica here. Thanks for listening to this clip from our full podcast. So, speaking of driver's licenses, I was wondering, when did we actually have to start having those here? And the very first driver's license were issued in 1903 in Massachusetts and Missouri, but they didn't require any test.
Okay.
It wasn't until 1908 when Rhode Island, pun intended, was the first state to require an exam. And a really fun fact is that Henry Ford, and of course we know he practically invented the modern day automobile, he did not get his license, his driver's license, until 1919 when he was 56 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm sure he could drive before then, but he wasn't licensed. I thought that was a fun little fact. In 1959, finally, all of the states required an exam and a license, and that ended with South Dakota finally deciding that that was something that they needed. And when I was looking at
There's such rebels in South Dakota.
They really are, especially when it comes to driving. They still have the least amount of restrictions on new drivers. Then that got me thinking, okay, so you need a license to drive.
Mm-hmm.
What other restrictions do we have when we're driving that we have to learn about other than the obvious ones, which are, stop. Mm-hmm. These are the stoplights. These are how they work. But I was thinking through all of my drives, speed limits. Each state is so different. Whenever I take my trip to Arkansas, I just feel like they're not all the same. And it made me wonder if we even had federal regulations on speed limits. And there is a little bit of an interesting history to that. It wasn't until 1901 that we had our very first speed limit in all of the US, and that was in Connecticut. Now, that speed limit was 12 miles in cities and 15 miles on country roads, which is so slow. I think we can ride our bikes that fast.
It's so slow.
Okay. From that point on, different states would decide if they wanted to have speed limits or maybe just cities. I know that my dad talked about growing up in Missouri and how the posted speed limit was safe and prudent, but he was still able to get a ticket. Go, Dad.
Now I know where you get it from.
Yes. Well, when your dad is a drag racer, you get a little bit of a lead foot. In 1974, President Nixon actually signed the Emergency Highway Energy Conservation Act, and it set a maximum speed limit to just 55 miles per hour across all of the states. Now, what was really interesting about this is it had absolutely nothing to do with safety. It was actually in response to OPEC quadrupling oil prices. And this was a way to help us not slide into a recession that they were seeing in Europe.
Oh, I did not know that. That's really fascinating.
I did not either. I was fascinated by the fact that we have speed limits due to nothing that has to do with keeping us safe. Yeah, very, very shocking. And that was actually kept on the books until 1995. In 1995, Congress voted to repeal it. And then it went back to each state setting its own speed limits. And when I read this, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense now. When I was growing up and we would go to Illinois, it would take us 12 hours to get to my cousin's house. Mm-hmm. And then in the late 90s, it was suddenly we were getting there faster. Well, that is why, because some of the speed limits changed. And then over time, actually knocked off 2 hours on that trip after some highways got built. Okay. But yeah, as a kid, I kept thinking, why are we getting here faster than we used to? Were we making better trips at the gas station? So we don't have a federal speed limit anymore. That's not a thing. It's state to state. Now, there is a stretch of road in America where you can go 85 miles an hour. Now, I want you to think about stereotypical America, and let's guess which state that's in.
I mean, we were just talking about the rebels in South Dakota, so I would say South Dakota.
I thought it was going to be that too, but actually it's Texas. It is
Texas.
A stretch, just a tiny little stretch from Austin to San Antonio, where you can travel at 85 miles an hour. Now, I will tell you from going from Dallas to Houston last summer that most people already go 85 miles an hour, and it was frightening. And they even go that speed at night. we have 85 miles an hour, and that is actually faster than the posted restricted limits on the Autobahn. However, the Autobahn, you can go as fast as you want, but there are some restricted areas, and they do restrict at 80 miles per hour on some areas and going as low as 60 in some. Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe if you want more conspiracies, weird history, true crime, and fun facts.